So good morning and welcome to our Ask the Expert series, which is today sponsored by our friends Lerners, and they brought a whole group from RBC too, also friends of the Chamber. So I'm not going to do much more than just introduce folks, allow them to go into it in more detail, but I can tell you that we've got our friend Andrew Johnson here from Lerners, Natalee Blake, Relationship Manager in Commercial Financial Services from RBC. We have Ann Diab, Group Consultant with RBC, Albert Schoeley, Financial Planner, Young Wealth Management Group, and Brad Young, Senior Portfolio Manager. So we're going to go one by one, I think, and Andrew is going to sketch out a little bit of what's going on.
Morning, everyone. So welcome to today's presentation on the legal and financial considerations in the world of franchising. Today we're going to be exploring some key aspects of buying, growing, and selling your franchise business. I'm very happy to be joined today by some excellent representatives from RBC. They have a broad set of specialties that they're going to explain to you as they go through their own presentations. So I'm Andrew Johnson. I'm a corporate commercial lawyer at Lerners, and I have spent a significant portion of my career so far specializing in franchise law. So I work with clients on both sides of the franchise equation, both franchisors and franchisees, as well as multi-unit owners, area developers, and they come from a diverse set of industries, from retail to gyms, quick service restaurants. We run the whole gamut, and I assist clients in preparing, reviewing, and negotiating franchise agreements, franchise disclosure documents, commercial leases, intellectual property licensing agreements, and a lot of my practice is mergers and acquisitions, basically transactions involving buying and selling businesses. So to give you an overview of what the presentation is going to look like today, we're going to delve into a few different aspects. First is going to be to orient everyone to what we're talking about when we're talking about franchising. And then we're going to talk a little bit about buying a franchised business, growing that franchise business, and then selling that franchise business. So the first question really is, what is a franchise? We see this term bandied about a lot. To most people, they're thinking about the Tim Hortons down the street or the McDonald's, and those are some great examples of what a franchise is. But the franchise also has a legal definition. So that includes the right to carry on business and in association with a trademark. So really a trademark license is what we're looking at, as well as payments that are being made in relation to that trademark license. So that can be an initial franchise fee, an ongoing royalty, really any payment at any time during the trademark license agreement. But what's really the hallmark of franchising is a significant control aspect. Consistency is the hallmark of franchising. So brand recognition, the look and feel, trade dress, method of operation. So for instance, when you're walking into a McDonald's, you understand from the outset the branding on the outside. When you walk in, where the counters are going to be, where the restrooms are going to be, those are really the indicia of franchising. So there are a lot of people who end up getting caught up in the franchise definition who never meant it to be, who really only ever meant to do a trademark license agreement. So you've got to be alive to that and careful of that, because there are also obligations on franchisors, even those who are inadvertently franchising. So what are those obligations? So there are the key legislative framework of franchising that exists in Canada is broken down by province. So there are 6 provinces in Canada that are franchise disclosure provinces that have legislation relating to franchising, and that includes Ontario, which is governed by the Arthur Wishart Act. So the Arthur Wishart Act really gives a structure to franchising, because there is an information asymmetry between what the franchisor knows and what the incoming franchisee knows. And in order to rectify that information asymmetry, there are obligations on the franchisor to give something called the franchise disclosure document. What this does is it breaks down the financial statements, the key players, any litigation background, the folks who have joined and left the system and the reasons why, contact information for current and former franchisees, essentially all of the information that you wouldn't be privy to but for this legislation. So the franchisor has to give you a document that includes the franchise agreement and all these breakout statements and exhibits, and you have to have 2 weeks with that document prior to entering into any franchise agreement, prior to paying any money or prior to signing any franchise agreement. And if the franchisor does not comply with that obligation, you have something called the franchise a rescission remedy, which is really where the franchisor has to put you back into the place that you were in prior to entering into the agreement. So that can be any fees that you've paid, your lease build out, any sort of liability that you've incurred, lost wages. So it's a really important and key aspect of the franchise relationship. Who are the key parties? Obviously, there's the franchisor, and that's Tim Hortons, McDonald's. The franchisee, who's the individual unit owner. Suppliers are a really important part of the franchise relationship because in many cases, something that many people don't know who are entering into the franchise relationship is that the suppliers are affiliates of the franchisor, or the franchisor gets a kickback from the suppliers. That's an important part of the relationship and something to be aware of. We also see, obviously, your customers and landlords play a key piece because there are often either a head lease between the franchisor and the landlord, or the franchisor may even be the unit owner. So within the franchise disclosure document, what are some of the other documents that we're going to see? We're going to see the outline of an operating manual, and that's really how to operate your business within the system. You're going to see their financial statements, and you should ensure that your accountant has a chance to go through those with you. You're going to sign back a receipt that says that you've received this franchise disclosure document. That's going to start the 2-week basically cooling off period between receiving the franchise disclosure document and either making a payment or entering into a franchise agreement. The franchise agreement itself, which is going to distill out what the obligations of each of the parties are, and then any sublease or tri-party agreement and any personal guarantees. And personal guarantees are very common within the franchise relationship and something to be aware of. Even if you have a corporation, it's very common that your franchisor will make you sign a personal guarantee for any obligations that you may have for royalties or payments that are owing to them. So when we're considering buying a franchised business, what are some key things to consider? First of all, you've got to consider which industry you want to be in. So how do you do that? So you can either look and, kind of have an understanding of what your business background is, find by yourself what the, particular franchise brands that accord with your own values are, or you can approach a franchise business broker who can help connect you with a franchise system. You should engage when you receive the franchise disclosure document from the franchisor that you have chosen. You should take that to your lawyer and have your lawyer review it with you to ensure all the obligations under there are commercially reasonable. You should also contact your accountant to make sure that you're set up in the way that you want to be set up. Are you going to be sole proprietor? Are you going to be incorporated? What does that look like for you? During this period of time, as you're reviewing the franchise disclosure document, it's a really good time to try to negotiate the provisions of the franchise agreement. So if you have a lawyer who is familiar with the franchising industry, they're going to understand that depending upon the maturity of the franchisor that you're working with, depending upon what their expansion plans are, that there are certain provisions within the franchise agreement that may be negotiable. So when we're looking at this, if we're looking at resale, if we're looking way down the line of this franchise relationship, what really are you buying? You're buying a licensing agreement. So how do you maximize the value of that licensing agreement that you're buying? Extend the term, add additional renewal terms, get exclusivity of territory, get first rights of refusal on businesses that are going to be growing in your territory. Your ad fund payments. So most franchise agreements have contribution in addition to royalties on your gross income. You're going to be paying ad fund contributions. Are those ad fund contributions negotiable? Perhaps, depending upon what area you're in, how mature the franchisor is. Are you going to be subject to non-competes or restrictive covenants? And are you going to be personally guaranteeing the franchise agreement? Many of these things come into play, especially if you're buying multiple units. We can often get big discounts on these items. So while you're operating and growing your franchise business, what are some key considerations here? So after your first few years of operating your first franchise, things are going well, you might turn your mind to expanding, buying additional units, buying additional territories. So at this point in time, you want to touch base with your financial advisors. You want to touch base with your accountants. You want to touch base with your lawyers again. You want to speak to your franchisor and see if they're going to offer you any incentives to expand. If you've got a good relationship with your franchisor, there may be certain incentives that they're willing to offer you. For instance, I'm negotiating a franchise multi-unit ownership right now, and so we're purchasing for our client the rights to Southwestern Ontario, getting massive discounts on the initial franchise fee. We're getting first rights of refusal for territories outside of Southwestern Ontario that are adjacent to it. So these are all things that you can negotiate at the time of expansion. You're also going to really want to look at, if things are going well after that first franchise agreement, whether this is going to be a system that you're going to spend all of your time in, or whether you're going to pursue other interests. If it's where you're going to spend all of your time, you're going to want to make sure that you are putting that into the franchise agreement, and considering whether or not you're going to hire additional folks who are going to work for you. So are you going to hire managers for your district? What does that look like? How do they get trained? That's important because many of these multi-unit agreements have cross-default provisions. So if you're not running it personally, you need to have some professional management in there, because if you get a default on one of these units, the default will cascade throughout the units and you may end up losing your right to sell everything. So that's a huge problem that you need to plan for. Moving on finally to succession planning. So planning for the future includes succession planning, and we're going to have some great speakers from RBC to talk to you about this. But from a legal perspective, you want to consider the fact that within the franchise relationship, as it's a licensing agreement, you need the consent of the franchisor in order to sell. So as you're planning your journey through this, when it maybe comes time for renewal, are you planning to sell it to your family? Are you planning to sell it to a third party? Are you planning to sell it to another owner within the system? If you're planning to pass it down through family, many times we try to plan for this and gather the consent well ahead of time. So on the first renewal, we might want to put in a designated successor so that we don't have to gather the consent at the end of the process and ask for the franchisor's permission where things may have changed within the system. We're seeing a lot of systems right now, especially really large multinational systems, that are refusing to sell to third parties. So for instance, if you own a Tim Hortons or Subway or something like that, many times they're refusing to consider third parties who are new to the system from purchasing additional units. So you have to sell to someone within the system. So franchisors keep a list of who the other franchisees are. They keep a pre-approved list of franchisees who are looking to buy additional units. So it's a good idea to touch base with the franchisor as you're beginning to think about selling, to see if they have a list like this, and you can start to canvass the possibilities of sale. Additionally, many franchise systems have franchisee associations. I'm actually doing a presentation on one tomorrow. And those associations are really good networking opportunities, because those people many times are the people who are going to ground your buyer base. So networking within your franchisee association can assist you in selling as well and finding a good buyer for you. So really, everything in here is about planning, and it's never too early to start. I really encourage people who are entering into a new franchise system to contact a good franchise legal counsel, a good accountant, and great financial planners at the outset in order to plan this journey through. It's not just about income. It's also about building something that you're able to sell at the end of it and protecting that investment. And the only time to really do that is at the outset. It's much, much harder to do so either halfway through or at the end. You also want to make sure that your corporate documents are all in place so that you're not backfilling everything right at the time of sale and encountering problems then. So in conclusion, buying and managing a successful franchise business is going to be a team effort. You need your lawyers, accountants, and financial professionals, as well as hired staff, to be on board and understand the process. If they understand it and are familiar with this process, they can help you plan for successful exit and to maximize your value in that time that you spend. That's it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalee Blake, and I'm a relationship manager of commercial financial services here in the London and St. Thomas market. I am one of the experts on my team who specialize in franchise. We are at RBC, and we are the franchise bank. I'm very proud to work for a bank like RBC, just based on the customization that they offer for franchise owners like yourself or franchisees like yourself. When I reflect on when I started with the commercial team 2 years ago, it was in the height of the pandemic, and I don't think any sector has been slammed financially like the retail franchise sector. And it has been a lot of hand-holding from applying for CEBA loan to this current year, paying out of those CEBA loans or continuing to support you with your financial needs. So when we speak about understanding what your needs are and showing up as a bank to see how we can support you to continue with your franchise operations, no one understands that more than myself. So we like to talk more about understanding the background of your franchise. I do work with a very diversified market, but franchise is one of the specialties for me and probably my favorite area to work with as well. Just because growing up, I've worked in the franchise myself as a student and then coming back full 360, being able to help those owners who helped me in my development. So I know the pillar they set in the community, and being able to be a bank that helped them along that journey is very personal to me. We have four pillars that we focus on is understanding the banking for franchise owners. We also designed your customized needs based on what your needs are, and we prepare you for what's ahead. And we're always there for you if you need anything. But I couldn't do that all by myself. I would say the biggest reason why I'm successful is the team that stands behind me. So like I said, I'm the relationship manager who manages your overall relationship. And one of the reasons why RBC is such a successful bank in this area is because of the team that's behind me. They each have their specialization, and as Andrew's mentioned, I've brought a few of them here with me. Trust me, I could fill this room if I was supposed to bring them all, but I chose the ones that I thought was most relevant to what I've seen in the last 2 years, have been key points to some of the pain points that franchisees have been experiencing. So as you can see up here, we have so many different sectors that we can dive into, and because we have such a diverse group of individuals, we're open to have conversations at the end if any of these pain points that you might have in your franchise or just wanted to understand a little bit more, to go a little bit more over that. So as Anne will talk about more from the employee retaining talent and keeping talent, similar to what Andrew talked about with their management team. And he also talked about succession planning, where Brad and Albert will go a little bit more in detailed. A few of partners that I wish that could sit at this table that I'll speak a little bit more to in some of my future slides is our beyond banking, because there's a lot of things that do affect franchisees and businesses in general that are just not shown in your financial statements, and it does affect your bottom line. And those are some of the beyond banking suites that we have that I'll go a little bit more into. Another one that I think that has been very successful for some of my franchise owners is what we call their equipment financial specialists. It's just a unique way of financing equipment, or a huge one is just the improvements you make in the facility that you might rent from. So I think those are some of the key ones that are not at the table today that I would love to talk about, and cash management as well. So if you have any questions about those, please feel free to see me at the end, and I can go a little bit more into detail. So I did talk about the beyond banking suite, and for the beyond banking suite. One moment. So the Beyond Banking Suite are either external partners that partner with RBC, or some of them are actually trademarked and owned by RBC as well, to go beyond, getting your loans, getting your deposits, getting your credit card, what most people are kind of used to. It's thinking about some of the new technology that has come out, or some of the new innovations that have come out in the banking sector is due to the pandemic, or due to just the movement of where things are going, such as digitalization is a key one that I've seen really ramped up in the last 2 years. Integrating systems to make things easier, simpler, and faster for you is also one that we have as well. So when you think of getting grants is a very common one that we see in the franchise space as well, because like I said, you probably one of the sectors that have hit very deeply by the pandemic, and then coming out into the interest rate markets right after something that were so unforeseen and something that wasn't really planned for. We have gathered these suites of different expertise to kind of help you to be more efficient, to be more, to save more money, or to be more timely with your operations. So one of my favorite ones that we talk about, I tend to deal with multi-franchise users. I do have my business partner in the audience today as well for those who are startups. But a huge one that has been very impactful, especially in the retail space, is how to scale the business. And RBC is one of the, other than the government, I believe this one of the biggest organization that has data. And they use that data to help you target your audience, figure out what your competitors are doing, figure out what's the best place to open a new location based on the demographic that you're looking for, or the people who would be needing your services. So you want to know, are you going for the family type of clientele? Are you looking for someone who's retired? Are you going to a developing area that's up and coming? Usually RBC has that information, data points in the system, and it's, like I said, one of the biggest, bigger than the biggest data centers other than the government that can pull all this information for you and kind of present it back to you, so you know where you can scale, where you can expand from a banking perspective. It's not only for a new location, it's actually been helpful for a few of my clients to find out what their competitors are doing and how they can be better and how they can be more competitive in the market. They can understand what their clients' needs are so that they can tailor the service or the product that they're offering. So for me, whether you're startup, whether you're maintaining the business or scaling, I'm here to manage your entire relationship manager, get you to the expert that you require to kind of move your business along. I'll turn it over to Albert, who will talk a little bit more about wealth planning.
Thank you, Natalie. I thought I'd start off with a little bit of background of who we are and what we do, and then we'll get to the slides that talk about some of the common planning topics that we have with franchise owners. So I just recently joined the Young Wealth Management Group that's headed by Brad Young. His son is here too, but he's just disappeared. He's in the back. Oh, there he is. So the full team is here. And I really focus on the wealth planning side, specifically a lot of the conversations about tax planning. So my background is that prior to joining RBC, which is back in 2012, I worked for one of Joe O'Neill's competitors, KPMG, and I'm a chartered accountant, so if I try to make some jokes, please laugh. So my specialty within KPMG was tax planning. So I was a senior tax manager where I specialized in Canadian tax. And that is a big conversation with the clients, franchise owners that we sit down with. Whether that is, where they're just starting out, where they're growing, the mature, or exit. And our team, as with other teams within RBC Dominion Securities, it's all about the planning, whether that's wealth planning, tax planning, estate planning, financial planning, risk management planning. And now I want to talk about some of those more common themes that we see with franchise owners. Okay, and I want to also add, it really depends on the life stage of the franchise owner, whether, what age they are, whether they have kids, whether they're married. So that all comes into play. But we're going to really focus more on the, what is related to being a franchise owner. So as an accountant, I always love to cover my butt. So I put up a disclaimer here. Now, my role is not to replace any accountant, even though I'm an accountant myself. Our wealth planning that we do is very much complementary with the existing accountant, lawyer, and other experts that the franchise owners deal with. So my role is not to put together an instruction letter and that is sent to the lawyer and here is how you structure your corporation. Mine is very much from a wealth planning point of view to help clients point them in the right direction, give them ideas and suggestions, and then they go to their experts, whether that's accountant, lawyer, or other advisors. So first topic I thought I'd talk about is accumulating wealth, which very much leads into retirement planning and estate planning. So initially, when you're starting off, as a franchise owner, you're likely going to be in the position where you have some debt. And so there's going to be eventually a shift from paying down debt to starting to save. And then the question comes up, well, what do I do with the surplus that I have accumulated? And so the conversation ultimately comes down to a salary and dividend mix conversation. Do I take out my earnings as a salary of dividends? And then where does that surplus sit? Whether it sits in a corporation. Most of the franchise owners that I've seen, they're incorporated. It's often a requirement of the franchise agreement. And then it becomes a question of that surplus in the corporation. What do I do with it? Or do I take it out as a salary and save that as an RSP? And then the conversation often switches, not to just the corporate savings, keeping it within the corporation and taking it out of the RSPs, is what does an IPP look like? And I'm sure some of you have heard of what an IPP is, an individual pension plan. What does that look like? Does that look better than, just doing an RSP? The conversation then sometimes, and hopefully eventually, shifts where we start seeing the franchise owner seeing personal savings. And now the question becomes, okay, what do I do with that personal savings? And do I start putting that into non-registered, or do I start looking into a tax-free savings account? Now, I often get the question from business owners, not just franchise owners, should I maximize my tax-free savings account if I have all of my surplus within a corporation? And we generally suggest that you don't, because you're taking it out in the form of a salary or dividend, you're being taxed on that, and then you're taking that after-tax money and putting it into your tax-free savings account, okay? We often talk about tax-exempt investing with life insurance. So this is where the scenario where we have franchise owners who have a significant amount of money in a corporation. And the tax-exempt investing of life insurance can be very powerful, ultimately from a wealth transfer point of view and estate preservation point of view. So you have to remember a lot of things, a lot of our decisions are driven, unfortunately, by taxes. And the federal budget that just came out last week, I'm sure it got a lot of traction with a lot of people. And I'll have a slide on that later on. And also in the packages right in front of you, the RBC folders, there is a summary of the federal budget of last week. And one of the big items, and which has been talked about, I want to say, since 2015, coincidentally, that was also the same year that Justin Trudeau was elected, the capital gains inclusion rate. And it has finally increased. And it ultimately means 9% extra tax on any capital gain that is triggered. Now, there's a little bit more to that, but I'll talk about that later. Tax-exempt investing with life insurance effectively allows you to take money that's been earned within a corporation out of the corporation with practically no tax, because life insurance within, whether it's personal or corporate, there is no tax on the life insurance proceeds. It's a little more complicated than that, but effectively 0 to no tax. And then we often talk about RESP planning and first home savings accounts as well. Now, this theme of accumulating wealth then starts shifting to, where they're deciding to retire and estate planning. They have buckets, as I like to call them, of money that they've saved, whether in their corporation, RSP, tax-free savings account, etc. How do they draw upon that in the most tax-efficient manner? And ultimately, what does that final tax bill look like? So that is quite an often theme that we have with our franchise owners that we sit down. Another topic, and this is a topic that most franchise owners don't necessarily want to talk about, and it involves insurance. And most people are not big fans of insurance, but protecting wealth and managing risk as a franchise owner is very crucial. And so this is another topic that we often talk with our franchise owners about. What happens in the event of a franchise owner passing away? What mechanisms do you ensure to protect the income that you're otherwise generating for your family, for your spouse, etc.? Also, what happens in the event of a permanent disability? What does that trigger, and how are you protected? So that's often a conversation that we have with in business protection and shareholders agreement in this scenario where you have multiple shareholders, right? So the 4 Ds, just as a quick reminder, death, disability, departure, and everybody's favorite 4D word is divorce, right? So what happens in that event? And insurance can play a role for some of those Ds. So this is a conversation that we often have with franchise owners. And something that is very crucial, and I find that is often not talked about or forgotten. Third one that I put up was really talking about the exit strategy as a franchise owner. And first bullet point that I put up was subject to the franchise agreement. The tax legislation is, in my opinion, much more beneficial if you're able to do a share sale. A share sale that ultimately where you're able to ultimately take advantage of the capital gains exemption. So the capital gains exemption on qualified small business corporation shares is right now a little bit more than $1 million. It will, as of June 25th, increase to $1.25 million per person. June 25th of this year, the capital gains inclusion rate is increasing as well. And they've provided a threshold where if you trigger that capital gain personally, up to the first $250,000, it doesn't have the higher capital gains inclusion rate. So if you're able to do a share sale personally, you've got that nice little threshold where you're protected still under the old capital gains inclusion rate, which is 50%. It's going up to 2/3 now. So if you can, as a franchise owner, sell the shares of your corporation, the tax would suggest that you're in a better position. Now, you'll see that the last point I put up is a June 25th, 2024. This is like a crucial, for me, really crucial date for franchise owners that are planning to exit and are looking to sell. If you can sell that business before June 25th, you are still under the old rules of the capital gains inclusion rate of 50%, which means if you trigger a capital gain, only 50% of that is taxable. The other 50% is tax-free. June 25th and onwards, now 2/3, so 66.67% of that capital gain is taxable. So that's about, if you run the numbers, it's about a 9% increase in the overall tax bill when you trigger a capital gain. Okay? Within a corporation or a trust, there is no first $250,000 is still under the old tax rules, right? So if you're not able to do a share sale, you do an asset sale, and that would be taxed within your corporation, and that would trigger that capital gain because it's an asset sale. And again, there isn't that first $250,000 that is under the old rules. It's now 2/3 of that capital gain is taxable. Okay, and then now it's in the corporation. How do you get it out of the corporation? And that becomes that next conversation, right? So other points that I put up here, we often have a conversation about estate freeze. And really where I see that making sense, because estate freeze is a hot topic, right? Because it sounds great. If you foresee that there's going to be significant future growth in that business, which we're assuming is within the corporation, and you are able to do a share sale, I would argue that's when an estate freeze would make sense. Because if you cannot do a share sale and you're doing an asset sale, why would you bother doing an estate freeze purely from a capital gain, multiplying capital gains exemption point of view, right? So that should be one of the questions. Can you do a share sale? And is there significant future growth, right? Because we often see, business owners, franchise owners say, like, I'd like to do an estate freeze, bring in the children so that I can multiply my capital gains exemption. Well, if the value is not going to increase significantly, it's a freeze at the current value. And if that future growth is not going to be there, how are you able to multiply the capital gains exemption? And family trust planning. So that's often talked about as well. You just have to remember the 21-year anniversary rule, where you either have to distribute the assets within that family trust on a tax-deferred basis, or it's a capital gain deemed disposition at fair market value, which triggers a capital gain. So you always have to remember that as part of the family trust. Other topics, just going down the last two bullet points here, maintaining or winding down the private corporation. So, in the scenario where we might have an asset sale and we have the corporation now holding the assets, often, clients will say, well, there's a cost to, dealing with accountants and lawyers on an ongoing basis. Can I just wind it up? And so we have that conversation. And usually the first point is no, because you don't want to pay a whole bunch of tax in 1 year. Let's do this over a number of years. And then income splitting. So income splitting through private corporations we talk about as well, and the revised tax on split income rules, which came up. I know the state, I remember the state because it's one of my favorite dates, July 18th, 2017. They brought out the revised tax on split income rules, which effectively stopped the income sprinkling within private corporations. So we talk about that as well, so that clients are aware of that. So that they can, again, try to be as tax efficient as possible with any proceeds that they have from, let's say, an asset sale versus a share sale. And sorry for my rambling there. You can see that I'm quite passionate about taxes. Last week was not a fun day for me when that federal budget come out. My phone was, lots of texts back and forth going between lots of friends and clients and all that sort of fun stuff. The package has a little bit on that federal budget, so hopefully that gives you an overview if you haven't already looked into it. So I'll pass it on to Anne next.
This one? Okay. Good morning. I hope we still have everyone's attention. And do we need a little stretch break? Are we okay for a bit? Okay, wonderful. So thanks for having us today, and thank you, Andrew and Lerners, for allowing RBC to be present this morning and talking about franchise and the the programs that are available. My name is Ann Diab. I'm a group retirement consultant in Southwestern Ontario, so my geography is a bit larger. I support companies and business owners, like many of you in the room, with employee attraction and retention by offering group savings and wellness programs. A lot of the themes that were talked about already this morning really align with how I can support a company and a franchisor with employee attraction and retention, especially those franchisors who have multiple locations and really want to focusing on their key management to take care of them, et cetera. So we're seeing a lot of franchisors really wanting to focus on their key employees, and that's a main conversation that we do have in the marketplace when talking about the group program. When we look at the group savings and wellness program within RBC, I'd like to consider it the best kept secret. I've been with RBC just coming up on 2 years, been in banking across various colors of banks for 18 years. And I can truly tell you that the Group Advantage program, along with many others, is the best kept secret of RBC. We are a complement to the commercial services side, Dominion Securities, and wealth planning. We support companies and business owners on an ongoing basis. We have conversations about their employee culture, their retention, attraction, strategies, et cetera. When I meet with the companies and business owners, that's the first question I ask is, tell me about your company culture. What are you doing for your employees? How do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? And through the programs that we offer, that can support your initiatives as well. So regardless of size, whether your company size is 1 employee or thousands of employees, RBC Group Advantage can help. We don't have cookie cutter, check the box programs. That's how we pride ourselves on the customization, to Natalee's point, in the franchisor space. We can customize a group savings plan to your individual company needs as well. What we do know with employee attraction and retention, a company with a well-established total compensation wellness package tends to attract and retain employees at a higher rate. So employees who feel valued and who feel that they've been taken care of, they tend to, their productivity is increased. They're not stressed about their finances. They're not worried about their next paycheck, et cetera. They know that their employer is taking care of them, that they're invested in the organization, and in turn, that would increase the productivity that they're giving to that company. Although they're not an owner, they may feel that they are an owner because their employer is investing in them through a group savings and long-term wellness program. The slide here, there's a lot of numbers up on the slide here, but just to share with you, we talked about pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, pandemic. There's a lot of conversations, especially in the franchise space, really having a challenge to retain and attract employees. I talked to a few franchisors during the pandemic where they had to literally close their 24-hour, we'll just call it Tim Hortons stores, because they didn't have people to work in those stores. And a lot had to do with that, with the employee engagement and the stresses that endured. Coming out of the pandemic, there is still a transition. We're still seeing a trend where people are looking to change their jobs. So more than 65% of people are looking to change their jobs, whether it's related to better pay, company culture, better benefits, just going to this, the company next door just for $1 more an hour. It is happening, and that's where the company culture comes into play. The pulse that you have with your employees, what are they feeling? What are they wanting? Are we taking care of what they need? We talk about succession planning and retirement planning, and companies with a surplus of cash, they're successful because of the employees that they have. So you as an employer want to make sure that you're taking care of your employees. We do know that 1/3 of companies of small businesses are having a challenge finding skilled workforce. So that's still, I talk to a lot of employers on a day-to-day basis. We see the job postings that are out on LinkedIn, Indeed, social media. We do see the signs on the streets that hiring now, paying bonuses just to attract people. So it's still evident, it's still prevalent. So really you need to focus on, what are you offering? How do you differentiate yourself as an employer? And how do you want to be an employer of choice? And that's where we can come in to help you with that. So quiet. I got everyone's attention. I'm flipping through my pages here, so. So more statistics here. I won't bore you, but just to, employee stress can affect your bottom line. So we do know that employees that are stressed really are less focused at work. It does impact their mental health. There is absenteeism related to stress, financial stress. Financial stress causes physical stress, causes mental stress, and it's a domino effect. So we know that it's prevalent and evident, and the numbers speak for themselves. We talk about financial plans, and that's where RBC can come in with your employees to support that financial plan, extending that financial wellness to the employees. So one differentiator with RBC Group Advantage is that we offer that one-on-one holistic advice for your employees to have that financial future, to feel confident in their financial future and having a financial plan. So over 50% of Canadians do not have a financial plan, never sat down with an advisor, never had an idea of what their financial future looks like, what their retirement looks like. I talked to many people who work for their organization for 25, 30 years, and I've said, when do you retire? I don't know when I can retire. And they've been with the company 25 plus years, and they're just collecting their paycheck, going on with their day-to-day, but they never sat down to say, okay, what does my future look like once I stop working? And that's where we can come in. We have our licensed advisors. Many of the panels here today, we do have an extension of that service through RBC as well. Many feel that they're behind in the retirement savings. So more than 65% of people feel that they're behind in their retirement savings. If I look at mine, I'm probably behind too. But it does, if you're not taking a look at it on a regular and ongoing basis, you do need to refresh that. Just like you change the oil on your car, you service your car, you change the roof on your house, you have to maintain those things in order for it to sustain, as well with your personal savings plan. And that's where we talk to your employees as well to make sure that they feel confident in that plan. We talked about the stress-related employees who feel stressed, that they tend to be absent from work. That affects their productivity, that affects you as an employer, affects their bottom line. So if you can help somewhat facilitate that with your employees, you're further ahead, and you can be the employer of choice. This slide here, there's a couple of topics. Again, when I meet with business owners and key decision makers within organizations or companies, whether it's a franchise or not-for-profit agencies, corporations, et cetera, we look at these 6 pillars when we sit and consult with the employer of choice. So we look at exactly what their evolving business needs are, whether you're acquiring a franchise for the first time, whether you're looking to take on multiple locations. We want to understand what your evolving needs are. We look at the talent management. So what's your talent management look like? What are your key managers, key players? Have they been with you for a long time? Are you finding a high turnover with that? Are you having trouble attracting talent? And what strategies do you have in place? And that's the conversations that we talk to about and have in more detail to help you come up with a solidified total wellness plan. Employee engagement is another topic. It's a big umbrella topic. I'm sure we can go on, and it can be another event session that we can talk about. But really, how well do you know your employees? How well do you know what they're going through or what their needs are? So that's oftentimes a lot of companies have pulse surveys. We have one coming up soon, where just to get a sense of what employees are feeling, how they're feeling about the organization, how they're feeling about their work, the workload, et cetera, if they're stressed or if they're overworked, et cetera. So you really want to get in tune with that with your employees. Employee benefits, there's 2 sides of the equation. A few of us talked this morning before we started. The medical dental benefits. So when companies say, I have benefits, I tend to ask a further question, well, what do those benefits look like? I have medical dental. Well, what about group retirement savings or group pension? Do you have that? So there's 2 sides of the equation when you're looking at that benefit package, and that's where I come in on the group savings and wellness side. When I talk about the group savings and wellness side, there's different components within that program. It could be a defined contribution pension plan. Many companies don't realize that RBC offers a pension plan or can extend that pension plan to employers for their employees. We have group retirement savings, group tax-free savings accounts, as well as a deferred profit sharing plan. There's also additional perks and benefits through our reward program that's extended to the employees on behalf of this program. Financial wellness is another component that you see here, and that financial wellness goes back to that advice piece, the holistic solutions, providing your employees with those resources and tools to feel confident in their financial future. So you as an employer, we've seen companies where they set up a group retirement savings plan, and in turn, that employee turns around and uses that money for their first-time home buyer. So they can use that RSP to use that for a down payment for their first time as a homeowner. What better story to tell as an employer to say, you know what, I helped my employee buy their first home. So those are some ways and strategies that we can extend and help the program that you're offering to ensure that your employees have a confident financial future. Employee engagement, I'll just touch on that quick. I talk about culture and I ask what you do for culture. A lot of companies, and we do have some as well with RBC, we do pizza days on Fridays, or, I buy a round of coffees for my team on, whatever, certain days of the week. That's fine and well, and that, really brings smiles to people's faces. I know I love coffee and pizza, but you look at what else is available, and offering this financial wellness and savings program is one of those keys to success. I also want to mention, if you do have a plan or you're looking to acquire a franchise that does have a group savings plan or a group pension plan, you want to evaluate that too. What is the participation rate? So a lot of times we have companies who have a pension plan or a group savings program. Well, we have one already. And I always ask, tell me about the participation rate. And oftentimes it's 50 to 60% participation. So that in turn tells me it goes back to that employee engagement and that company culture. Not everybody's invested in the program. And that's where we can come in and making sure that every employee has an opportunity to learn and understand the program and make sure that they take full advantage of that program. And in the event there's a matching component, if a company's matching, we always like to say you're leaving money on the table. If they're not participating, to say that your employer is investing in you, putting in this money for you on your behalf, why wouldn't you take it? So we do show the benefits and making sure that they take advantage of the program and the offerings that are available. That concludes my presentation. I do have some information in the booklets as well, and I'd be happy to chat with you if you have any questions or comments as it relates to the group savings and wellness program. So I think I'm going to pass it back to Andrew to lead us into some question and answers, right? Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks everybody. So I think this part is supposed to be a bit more interactive. I've got some questions for the panel, but if anybody has any questions, also feel free to ask them at any time. Off the hop, does anybody have a question for anybody on the panel? All right, seeing none. Natalee, what are the key, do we have one? Oh, yeah. What are the key priorities that franchise owners are faced with in today's environment?
That's a great question, Andrew. And there's different types of franchise owners. There's, like we've mentioned today, there's ones that are buying or acquiring their very first franchise, to existing franchise owners who are scaling in the business, where they're ramping up and taking on more responsibility, and franchise owners who are also exiting. What I see that has been a big focus for franchise owners is for my role, is the interest rates has been a common topic that comes up, especially after coming out of a recession and kind of trying to come back out in the scenes where the foot traffic is hitting their business to kind of increase those revenues. Suppliers was a huge issue as well, that we've seen some changes now that we're kind of back to normal out of the pandemic. But I think the biggest impact has been a lot of business owners had to come up with a lot of cash to make those payments out earlier this year. and it's being creative. I think where I add value is being creative and figure out how can I put you back in a positive cash flow operations, and what are some of the non-traditional things that I can do to help you kind of move forward on that. A lot of the time, people think of the bank as, you know, you go, you get your credit card, you get your loan, and that's all that we can offer. But what I truly believe is that just how diversified my team is and all the different expertise that they bring to the table, there's always creative solutions to kind of impact that cash flow within your business, depending which one of those different things that I mentioned that could have impacted you. Yeah, that's what I think has been a huge one, is that they tend to focus more on the financials of, like, you know, how much they're spending, how much is coming in, but they're not looking at the operations to see where is there other opportunity, and I'm able to provide that advice.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've seen that from an M&A perspective as well, that just even interest rate uncertainty over the past 18 months had a bit of a cooling effect on the volume of M&A transactions, but the moderation and at least some better sort of forecasting has been positive in that regard. Yeah.
So I've got a question. I don't know if we're using microphones. They're all
I could hear one.
I think we're using them for the recording, right? Yeah. So my question is, so when I saw the chart, Natalee, of you know, franchisees or franchisors, a lot of it's, you know, people that it's not a surprise. It's McDonald's, it's hamburgers, it's so on. Are there real new different growth areas in franchising? Like something that's exciting? Well, I mean, it's all exciting, but I mean, something that's, you know, where would you point to say, well, there's a real growth area? For example, just in my own personal life, I think I suddenly discovered that my vet is a franchise or something like a franchise.
Yep.
So that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, we've rolled up. I've seen that happen a lot recently in some of the professional services. Rolling up independent clinics into franchise systems has been something of a topic du jour lately. So, how about you folks?
Yeah, we've seen, like Andrew gave a perfect description of what a franchisee is, and it's that could be across many sectors. I think people are just so used to the traditional McDonald's and Tim Hortons, but we've actually have been a quite few successful people right here in London, who started off as small business owners and kind of scaled their business and now turned it into a franchise model. We help from that perspective as well. So I don't think there's any industry that you necessarily can't franchise. It's just once you've kind of branded what you do, and then you want to sell that brand or the proprietor to other people to be able to use that to leverage, make it easier for them, then you can turn that into a franchise. And we have each franchise that's out there, RBC has its own program for it, and they negotiate with their national office of how they can support their franchisee based on what the needs would be for them to grow that, for the franchisees to be able to acquire what they're doing. So I think once you add value and people want to buy into it, and you have the client base, you can basically franchise anything, and we're there to help support with that.
Great. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Mike Elliott. I'm actually a franchisee of contract staffing, temporary staffing, headhunting business. A little bit unusual, not the hamburger flippers. So James and I are partnered in this business with a silent investor who will be exiting the business at the end of the year. Is there an advantage to borrowing money and paying her off, or keeping the person as kind of the financier, but out of the franchise agreement?
Sorry, so the question would be, would you purchase,
borrow a large sum
borrow
of
to
money
buy out their shares
Yeah.
as opposed to using them as. Sorry, I'm not.
as the bank. Yeah.
Like as in a vendor take back, leaving like what's the option other than borrowing money from the bank? Sorry.
Borrowing money from the individual or borrowing
money
money from a bank.
Okay, so
And I think
vendor
maybe it
take
might be a
back.
tax conversation that might be a week-long meeting, but
I think this is a very holistic question that you ask, and it just speaks to the level why we do things in partnership to make sure that we have all the experts at the table. You would definitely need legal advice. You would definitely need financial planning advice. You would need some taxation advice. You're going to need a group. Your accountant should be at the table as well to help you figure out what that strategy looks like. And then obviously your bank comes in to support in any way that it can, like from a lending perspective, if that's one of the options. But I think you would need all your experts at the table. But I think financial planning, the planning piece is where I would start with, and then they actually pull the different expertise. But I'll let Albert talk.
I can add a little bit too. I think the question would be with the silent partner, whether they're looking at a share sale, right? And whether they would be eligible for the capital gains exemption. So I'd probably start there and then look at possibilities where, you could structure it in such a way that, he or she can trigger that share sale and capital gain. And then the next question that, if I was in your shoes is how am I going to finance that? And, if they're willing to do a vendor take back note and the interest rate is better than what the bank would offer you, well, I mean, you kind of know the answer, right? But that it does provide discussion points with the silent partner too. Maybe he or she wants to be out sooner instead of later, and a vendor take back note doesn't really provide you that option, right? So looking at what the bank can offer for a quick, easy, clean exit would be likely the route you would go. So I think those would be the first two main questions. But going back to what Natalee said, having that team exploring the different options will be key. Your accountant, lawyer, banker, wealth planner, etc. Right? Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. It's going to be a fun time for you.
All right. Back to Albert and Brad. Is there one important tax measure from the 2024 federal budget that we should be aware of?
Absolutely. So if there's one thing that you could remember from today, June 25th, 2024, that's when the capital gains inclusion rate increases. So again, to my earlier point, if you are looking at selling a business and you're already in the process of doing that, if you can sneak it in before June 25th, 2024, which is, what is that, less than 2 months away, if I can do math? That's 9% tax ultimately, depending on where that sale is happening, whether at the individual level or corporate level. Individual, you get a little bit better of tax after June 25th, but June 25th, 2024, increase in capital gains inclusion rate. Now, we're looking at historically, this brought up a lot of uproar. Talking to a lot of business owners are like, well, this is my savings plan, and it often is. It is often their retirement plan. The capital gains inclusion rate, as most of you know, has increased in the past, and it went back down. So other strategy, and you'll probably just laugh, is wait it out. Wait it out until the capital gains inclusion rate comes back to 50%. When that is, we don't know. So it's much more challenging for people that are considering to exit whatever business that they're in. So June 25th, 2024. That was really long-winded answer.
Yeah, I see a lot of closing dates that are going to be brought forward to that. Yeah, we're going to see an artificial acceleration of closings. Anne, can you tell us a little bit about RBC Group Advantage?
Thanks, Andrew. I think I touched on it during my presentation, but in talking into the marketplace, not many know that RBC Group Advantage exists. So we are different line of bank within the RBC. We support on the group savings and wellness side through defined contribution pension plans, group retirement savings plan, deferred profit sharing plans, group tax-free savings accounts, and along with that is the wellness program that we offer. I do want to share that we don't charge, we're a free service, so we don't charge a fee to set up the plan for your company or a company. We don't charge an administrative or maintenance fee for the program. The only investment or cost we like to refer is the investment into your employees. So really, when you look at that, how much of an investment do you want to make to your employees? And through the Group Advantage program, we can offer that to you.
Great. And I think that brings us right up to time, unless anybody has a further question.
One quick one, Ann. So in that rainbow of benefits in the Advantage, there was one that sort of stuck out for me, which was Futurepreneur. What was that in yours, Natalie? Sorry.
So that's one of like our partners that we partner with, and it's usually for someone who it doesn't have franchise or their own business that they're starting up with. They can work with this third party to get started with their business. So they help them with different skill sets, help them with grants as well, just to get them started with their business, whether it's franchise or not franchise. But that's one of the beyond banking that we offer, measures that we offer for business owners.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone.
So I'll just thank all of you on behalf of the Chamber for coming in and helping us today to learn a little bit more about this important topic. Two great partners here of the Chamber, Lerners and RBC, our banker, by the way. And I want to thank our friends at LAV at the back for providing the support today, because all of this is going to be available on our YouTube channel and, of course, to you folks to use however you wish. The last thing I'll just say is on the way out, Sylvia, do we have our Shared Waters books, I think? Yes. Yeah. So one of the things that we did year before last as part of our Indigenous community engagement plan was to work with a young Indigenous creative designer to create this book with a photographer, Richard Bain, who you'll know. The Indigenous designer is Katie Wilhelm. She's actually on one of our committees. And this beautiful book was produced to explore our shared involvement in the land, the water, and the people in our area. So very beautifully designed, very beautifully created. It's free to anybody who doesn't have one. If you want to take one, you want to take two, or do you want some for your business, that's all you have to do. It's part of an ongoing commitment of action that we here at the Chamber take. Of late, we have been sitting down at a table, a discussion group, I don't want to call it an advisory council, of local Indigenous folks to try and understand what our next step is. And one of those steps is to try to understand what the nature of our relationship is with Indigenous businesses and Indigenous people in the region, and how do we structure our governance so that it would embrace membership on our board, membership on our governing committees. What does that look like? And so that's an action step for us, and hopefully can be resolved through discussions with our discussion table over the next year or so. So I'd encourage everybody else who's thinking along those lines to take those types of steps. It's not just about acknowledgements, land acknowledgements, it's about action. So with that all said, thank you so much, folks, and thank you for coming today, and I'll let us go to a little bit of networking if we'd like. Thank you.